Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Counselor's Office. I'm Mr. Gaming Counselor, and we are still live, continuing on the train live right now, both on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. We'll probably see if we can get Kick and some other stuff just for the funsies of it. We're reacting to some more Marathon. We're going to watch a video that has garnered a lot of frustration from the Marabots. A lot of people are getting triggered by this review or this video. So we have this by Master Gecko. Oof. Can't wait to see how calmly and rationally the Marathon community reacts to this one. Here's already some of the reactions. The fuck do you mean death of a game? The fucking thing is still alive, for crying out loud. No, remember, when you can poke a dead, like if you look at a dead corpse, it takes a while for the body to rot away. It takes a while. And that's what's happening in Marathon. You just don't know it. Whenever people talk about Marathon on YouTube, it always has a lot of derision and dismissiveness in the speech. Marathon is not dead. It is a game that is intended to be incredibly... Oh, yeah. A game that's cost $250 to $300 million is intended to be a niche and not make money. This is such a unintelligent argument. It's not even funny how stupid it is. Like, that's yes, a billion-dollar company being controlled by another billion-dollar company is doing charity work by making games that are intended to be niche and not popular or financially, profitable. They did it as just, a fan game. It's meant for the fans. Just truly no worries about financials. Sony said they're going to cover Bungie. They're not going to have any layoffs because of that. They laid off Destiny and they laid off some Marathon employees too. But no. Don't worry. This is a charity game. We run this game on hugs and kisses. A lot of overly dramatic theater kids in r/Marathon, even using spoiler warnings on YouTube video links. Source below and will likely be deleted by the mods. So what do we have here? So, death of the game. This may very well be the post that results in a ban. However, I do believe this is something that should be addressed due to coming from a surprisingly credible individual. Isn't this guy who has extended crash outs in his own comment section when people disagree with him? Still, I guess I can't blame him for putting this one out. Maybe rent is due. Last time I noticed, that was the Titanfall 2 community. And to be honest, as much as I love the game, he was right. Oh, let's see. Was this deleted? It was! Oh, what a bunch of fucking sissies. Hello, your contribution has been removed due to Rule 3. Clickbait, vaguely titled posts are not... Yeah, click that... Yeah! How long till this gets censored? 2 days. Apparently it took 2 days. You're telling me the YouTuber made a topical and profitable titled piece of content optimized to get views? Well, shit. You are very brave for posting this here. I'm here before it gets taken down. Isn't this guy who... Oh, they are... Okay, so we're back, baby. Okay, well, good to know. Definitely, yep, good job. Who saw this coming? But we're going to watch it. We're going to watch this and see why so many people are having crash outs about it. Because I'm sure everyone and their brother is okay. Let's see. Is checking everyone life support. I knew that asshole Nerd Slayer was going to make a Marathon video sooner or later with really stupid. Yep, here it goes. They're so triggered. Let's watch it. Let's watch the video that triggered the Marabot community. We're going to watch it. Link will be down below for you. But that's so bright. God, I'm ready. Put it in my veins, baby.
Halo, Destiny, two iconic shooters that have done their part in affecting the entire global gaming landscape, especially within their domain, the realm of shooting and gunplay. Bungie has been making iconic shooters for north of 20 years, managing to stay
That's fair.
relevant as a company in the process too. But as we have recently covered on the Death of a Game series, a series where we investigate the largest contributing factors to the death or process of dying of a game or company by utilizing a timeline of events filled with clues and bits of evidence. But most importantly, we activate our detective intuition, especially during the final deduction, where we crack the case for good. In case you missed any of the clues along the way, Bungie has been on the ropes as of late, with not only Destiny 1 having had its content long moved to maintenance mode quickly after the release of the sequel, Destiny 2, but with Destiny 2 having now also been moved there too, as of the summer of 2026. Throughout this drama, including their acquisition by Sony in 2022 for $3.6 billion, Bungie has been quietly cooking on a number of other projects. While many, including a spin-off Destiny game, would be cancelled ultimately,
Like, we know that they were cooking on projects before the layoffs and all that jazz. They've said they've got things working in the background. Like, I don't know if that's true and how much. We know that there's supposed to be a mobile game that they're working on, supposedly, with Gummy Bears. I think they made a different studio like for that. I don't know. Like, I would not expect a big game from Bungie right now. I wouldn't.
Bungie finally was able to make one of their projects stick, something they would do utilizing a long-asleep IP that once was the talk of the town in the shooter world, bringing many gaming innovations with it, Marathon. After a change of direction and course, Marathon would be delayed before finally dropping the following year, March 2026. But Marathon never got its own time in the sun, really, and expectations of the next Destiny title that wasn't to come, and the potential eventual shutdown of the game and series was weighing heavily over the release of Marathon and beyond. But besides just the player expectations placing Marathon on the guillotine, so to say, the game itself had some issues too, being unable to differentiate itself enough and find a lasting population. If none of this prior stuff had happened, we certainly wouldn't be covering Marathon. But considering the majority of the Bungie team left is working on the game, and because I don't think it's a feasible business product or video game to keep an entire struggling
Ooh, he said the truth. It's not financially stable. Yeah, I can see why people, the Marabots got triggered. Yep, I can absolutely see why they got triggered, chat. Oof.
company alive.
You
let
said
alone
the
even
trigger
just in
words.
General. That's why Marathon is being featured on the Death of a Game series despite not literally being dead. Something that does happen.
By the
from time to
way,
time.
holy shit. Isn't it funny that people were talking about the title and he even mentioned in the first 2 minutes why even it's not actually technically dead? He even says the point at the beginning. It's crazy to me that these people don't even watch it. They just post like people get triggered by thumbnails and titles and they don't even know what the fuck the thing even says. So they're not even giving logical arguments about it. They're just getting triggered. This goes to show that again, they're just getting triggered. They're being stupid.
Series, of course. Marathon is a hot subject at the moment, with many detectives asking me to cover the project before the body is even cold. And so, detectives, let us get started on this case, as it continues to unravel before our very eyes.
Death of a game.
The story begins after the acquisition of Bungie by Sony in 2022 for a whopping $3.6 billion. This would include their flagship Bellevue studio in Washington with over 900 employees or more. Sony seemed quite high on what they could do with Bungie, and their included IPs, especially because they had a long prior relationship with them due to their Destiny games on PlayStation. And well, 2022 was the best year for Destiny 2, and Destiny really, as a series, was the year the game's Witch Queen expansion came out, one of the most highly touted in the game's history. But to be clear,
it was phenomenal. I know a lot of people are like, it's not that good. Or that people are overhyping it. Shut up. These are the same people that think Renegades and Edge of Fate were banging. Like, shut up. You don't know anything. Like, obviously, player counts and player numbers speak volumes. No one, it was ass. Let's be honest.
the acquisition
Witch Queen was
happened
banging
right before the expansion and was likely in motion from the previous year. What I mean is that Sony had likely put this into motion back in 2021. That was the year that Bungie had massive harassment lawsuit issues, and when they started introducing one of the worst practices in gaming history, a severe dagger to their own series in vaulting.
Oh,
What on
God,
earth were
yeah.
they basing their projections on? Worse, according to some former Bungie developer claims, the company was facing insolvency without the acquisition.
Yep.
We seem to back up our investigation into Bungie as a company through our other 2 Destiny videos. Go check them out, please.
Yep.
Especially when in a year or so time, they were already facing including major layoffs and more. Bungie has somehow managed to do it again, after never finishing their deal with Microsoft or Activision either. They had managed to keep themselves afloat, despite the internal and executive issues that had plagued the game since the Microsoft departure. Marathon would be announced May 25th, 2023, and this was the first Bungie project post-Destiny and the first Sony project. Marathon was a long-retired IP, with the first game having launched back in 1994, and one that managed to introduce some unique innovations, such as mouse licking. Yeah, mouse licking, physics, and the coexisting of friendly and enemy AI. It also included an interesting premise and lore set within the game too and world, being a game about a large colony ship named Marathon that was sent to the Tau Ceti system to build a new colony. The story revolves around the three main characters, which are actually AI that were put in charge of keeping systems running while those aboard would be in cryosleep. Durandal, who was an AI put in charge of menial tasks, would go rampant or rogue, inviting an alien ship into contact with the colony, and then that alien ship would destroy most of it, and then spearheading the human civilization into intergalactic space warfare with the race of slaving aliens thereafter, the Four. The new Marathon wasn't set to be a revival, but a new entry in the same universe set in the same...
And that's a thing. That's a big thing. We need to play the OG. Maybe, you know what? Maybe next week. Who would be down to see me play the OG next week? We just play it. Like, surely it shouldn't take too long to beat these games. Because I've heard constantly from people who actually play the fucking game, the OGs, and actually know the lore, that this game is actually not even. It's not. It's just. It's Marathon in name only with like some skins, but it's completely different from what the actual story was. And by the way, no one literally gives a shit about lore entries. People play fucking video games for the lore to be in their face. People don't play video games to read. They play video games to absorb themselves into at that moment. If you have to stop to read a fucking book to understand the game, fundamentally, the game is bad. I said the same thing about Destiny, that the supplemental is fine, but core story should never be in the background. It should always be in the forefront.
Star system of Tau Ceti, this time investigating a lost colony on one of the system's planets, Tau Ceti 4, and also, according to Bungie, in search of riches, fame, and infamy. Game director Christopher Barrett, who was behind a few Destiny expansions, would state concerning the new sci-fi shooter that it would be a PvP-focused game and not feature a single-player campaign, though Christopher would confirm the game was not a direct sequel to the originals.
Holy shit, it's not a direct sequel, but something that certainly belongs to the same universe that feels... So for everyone that says that this is based on the story, no. Finding those opportunities to nod to the universe's lore. So it's not the same Marathon. It's its own thing.
Though it would still try to honor the original game mythology and story. To describe the temperature of this time, Bungie gamers were a bit confused at the usage of a Marathon IP, especially when the game seemed to abandon single player, which is what the game was previously known for.
Exactly.
Why not make it a Destiny branded game? We didn't quite know the game would be an extraction shooter yet either, which would only further the departure from the Marathon IP and further confuse.
People were hyped about this because they're like, first off, the skins didn't look that bad, and if you look at the world. Yes, there's like some green and blue, but you don't see as much fucking color as what we see before. Like, it didn't look nearly as bad. Also, like, they didn't have the blue blood when they showed it off. There's just the very first trailer. People were like, okay. There was also Division, but more the main gaming audience, not the Destiny community. The main gaming audience was more accepting of this until the shit hit the pan and they found out this extraction shooter. It was trend chasing, and they showed like more of the art, and you're like, oh, this is awful.
Destiny players who saw Marathon, and what would almost inevitably from this point on become a sore spot for them, as a game they saw that was only taking away from the further development of the Destiny series, which is hard to really argue, right? Major layoffs would plague Bungie during Marathon's development, as Destiny 2 would be blamed for the company's underperformance just a year after the company's acquisition. Total number of employees impacted was estimated to be around 100 employees too, amounting to around 10% of the company's overall workforce. It's during this time we would realize that Bungie had been, despite their acquisition up until this point, acting as an independent subsidiary of Sony. Further, the board of directors had been in support of Bungie, but had become split, with Pete Parsons, the company's CEO, serving as the tiebreaker vote. The layoffs were issued by Bungie, though, for example, which was almost worse in a sense, because it spoke to a possibility.
Did I miss that? Are you telling me that it was Bungie that ultimately decided the layoffs? No. I thought Sony said, hey, you've got to make cuts. And Bungie was the one to decide which cuts happened. I know that Bungie, the leaders of Bungie, one of them had said, you know, they wouldn't take pay cuts because they weren't that kind of company. Like, that was a real statement from someone. I just didn't realize that they had the choice to fire people and they chose to do that versus actually finding other ways. Apparently I missed that little detail.
Had been in support of Bungie, but had become split, with Pete Parsons, the company's CEO, serving as the tiebreaker vote. The layoffs were issued by Bungie, though, for example, which was almost worse in a sense because it spoke to a possibly larger oncoming inferno, and that Bungie was struggling to keep running as a company on its own, which according to sources at IGN would lead to a fear of a total Sony takeover by the end of 2023. The reason this is relevant for
to my acknowledgement, they haven't completely taken over, but I know that they have lost a lot of independence. I think at this point that we can all conclude that they probably lost most of their independence. I don't know, we still have some C-suites that haven't jumped ship yet. But we did have several key players literally leave, like Pete Parsons, Jason Jones. There was Joe Ziegler, though he got hired on like in 2020, so maybe he's jumping ship. I don't know.
The story of Marathon, besides it being the same studio and, well, video game.
When I say he's jumping ship for the reason of getting a payout. I don't know if he gets the same payout as everyone else. I don't know. Yeah, that's all I gotta say to that.
Developer in question is because a total takeover from Sony could change the destiny, no pun intended, of the new sci-fi shooter, or put unfair expectation on an upcoming title that was never designed to be the video game that would feed Bungie's massive 800 employees or more, but it would soon be put into a position where they would have no choice but to do just that. While news concerning Marathon was quite tight-lipped, some serious news would drop in the spring of 2024, and that was due to some misconduct allegations and investigations surrounding game director and longtime Bungie developer Christopher Barrett, who had allegedly been texting lower-ranking female employees with suggestive texts, utilizing his position of power as an advantage. You know, a dork. This would lead to a leadership mix-up at Bungie, specifically on Marathon, with Joe Ziegler set to replace the guy that was creepy or whatever. Now, Joe Ziegler had recently joined the company that following year, where he had previously never worked on a Bungie-branded shooter. Instead, Joe Ziegler was credited as the brainchild of Valorant at Riot Games, a studio he would serve for over a decade. That includes being credited for the core design of Valorant, including its competitive focus as a game. The reason this is super relevant is when Bungie hired Joe to work as Marathon's game director, they were almost guaranteeing that that was the sort of game he was wanting to make. Joe had admitted in his departure from Riot that he had gotten bored of managing the game he created. He never said he didn't like the game and wanted to move on and create more games, something he failed to do after working with the R&D department at Riot Games prior to his departure. Now, you might say I'm over-exaggerating the claim he would make Marathon competitive focused, like he did with Valorant, but considering his small track record of games, hindsight being 2020, and his personality as a person, it seemed like it was far more likely that that would be the case. Then it would somehow go back into the Marathon roots as a game direction, where it would include single player and so on and so forth. Despite being announced over a year prior, Marathon had not been shown almost at all. That was until Ziegler would appear in the fall of 2024 telling fans that the game was on track, but just not ready to show anything yet. More importantly,
I like that he says that it was on track when it actually wasn't on track because they had to delay it. They delayed it twice. Though granted, I will give credit and say that they had to delay Marathon the first go around because they had to focus on the final shape for Destiny because Lightfall did so much irreparable harm to to Bungie and the Destiny franchise. Like the final shape, no one was excited for that game or that expansion. So they had to do some damage control. And so that's why they took people, core Destiny people from Marathon back into Destiny to give it love. By the way, if anyone ever says that Marathon didn't kill or help kill Destiny, it did. Marathon is to be blamed because if you have to take experienced people back from the game that left, Destiny, you take them back to fix and, save an expansion. That goes to show that expansion, that the game needs those people to be the way it needs to be. And so when you take those resources away, you are actively hurting that game. So putting in the, there's the pudding in the pie.
The same announcement, Ziegler would make the claim about Marathon that it's a game that's not for everyone, which I think is fine to say as a game developer and feels fine, and fair, all things considered. But
he's right. He never lied. Ziegler, that's the one thing you can talk about the Marathon community and the Mara Bros being delusional. This guy was honest from the start. Joseph Cross wasn't honest, but this guy was honest from the start. He said this game was not intended for everyone. It wasn't him saying that Destiny players are going to love this and love raids. That was like Scarrow and other content creators, being dumbasses, setting the game for failure. This guy straight up was like, this game is not for everyone. Because he knew his vision. Unfortunately, when you make a game that is very niche, and it's not intended for everyone. And you're very intentional. If it's not what people want, then the niche kills it. It dies. And it also is not his fault that Sony decided to can Destiny, which could have be used to support Marathon in the back end, because that's what was happening. Destiny was being used for years to support Marathon's development, and now without that, Marathon doesn't look good. And plus, Destiny started going downhill because of a lot of Bungie choices. He's not to be blamed for that. Joe Ziegler, if the one person that should never be playing for Destiny, like the dude was just living his dream, focusing on Marathon. But he was honest from the start. Like, he never intended for Marathon. He's not in charge of the profitability of the game, because I guarantee this guy got hired on, and he did not make Marathon with the intent of, being the breadwinner in the state that Marathon was intended to be another IP. And honestly, he probably didn't give a shit about the financials, because he's just making his game. It's just, unfortunately, you can't take the corporate aspect out of games nowadays, and that's just reality, especially consumerism. You don't give what the consumer wants. No one gives a shit about your artistic dream of what your game is. No one gives a fuck. People want what they want, and if you don't if you don't go where the fishes are in the pond, your art goes down the toilet.
The problematic part was that this expectation behind the game itself, which was that the new IP would mean a new audience. That was the ultimate goal for why they didn't make it a Destiny-branded game. But as we would later find out, almost 70% of Marathon's audience reportedly would be Destiny players. So if anything, the desire to split the projects was almost seen as adversarial by some Bungie fans, because the statement seemed to be aimed at them specifically, as most of the fans at Bungie at this point...
Isn't that funny? And that goes to show that, like, 70% were delusional, that they thought, we're going to support Bungie by getting Marathon and playing Marathon. It is crazy how brainwashed the Bungie community is.
Had long moved on from their grasps were PvE fans, not PvP fans. And well, Marathon was set to be almost exclusively a PvP or PvPvE experience. Maybe you can chalk it up to the fan base being sensitive, and boy, they are a sensitive bunch. For example, I had people ridiculing me for covering Destiny 2 before Marathon, though Marathon had literally just launched. But I think Destiny fans and thus Bungie fans have a solid point, and they're just very passionate for a reason, which was why was so much focus being put into a project that had such little crossover? Business was the answer. Bungie ultimately gave through their executive and design decisions, something I have accused Bungie of being more interested in already, due to their extensive anti-consumer practices, despite having some, as I already said, devout fans of their titles. Marathon would host a limited alpha testing of sorts April 23rd through the 4th of May 2025, and it's during this time we saw a waterfall of things coming out following it, starting with the reception of the game, which according to Kotaku had some good bits but left them scratching our heads, our being Kotaku. And also it's kind of funny because they actually said out, and this is like the first paragraph that's misspelled. But Kotaku, like many players, were high on the game's moment-to-moment gameplay, which was a return to form for Bungie, with miniguns functioning like past Destiny or Halo guns, and just the whole certain polish.
I remember watching the alpha, and that there's literally the Might of Many tools in the game. There was the Forsaken scout rifle I can see in the gameplay. And then there's animations. The Warlock animation is one of the, I forgot which one of the runners is. They do the Warlock animation with the hands when the Warlock uses like Devour or something. I forgot what, or it's the same hand animation. There was multiple animations stolen or took. It's not really stolen, but you know what I mean. They took it from Destiny and put it in Marathon, and it's just like comical. Like, bro, you have to take from Destiny to even make your new game.
Smoothness to accompany it all. The alpha testers gave testers access to 2 maps. 4 runners, think of them like a hero class or character that offered different ways to play the game, including with unique abilities and contracts you could fulfill for rewards and progression. Some players were likening Marathon, however,
like even
to Apex Legends.
Even the slug shotgun looks like a generic, outside of being Roblox. It's like the Roblox version of the Destiny slugs.
You can lose all of your stuff when you die, which was a worrying proposition, as Apex Legends had severe player retention issues due to the game's insanely high skill cap as a battle royale shooter. If Marathon was even more niche than that, it was going to struggle heavily to maintain a healthy population. More complaints in the game were concerning the game's fast time to kill, which made mistakes just way more fatal, and fights able to just end in seconds. Worse, because the maps were rather small, think way smaller than Fortnite or Apex Legends map due to design and the fact that the game only allowed for up to 18 players to play in the same lobby, not counting the AI in the game, so the small maps led to monotony, boredom, and just fights that were at a super fast pace that you couldn't avoid.
I agree. As someone who's actually played the game, like he's talking about the alpha, but I'm just saying in the game in general, like when the gunfights happen, it's just back to back to back. It's so fast. It feels so fast.
And the design of them led itself to people camping certain choke points, creating zones of anti-play, where players waited and listened for the best moment to strike instead of making their own movements and actions. The art style in Marathon was just about the crowning feature of the game, controversially, even, as it seemed to be either loved or hated. It was a contrast of bright neon aesthetics mixed with stark color accents and intentional negative space. Or if you didn't take art in college, it has bright colors and utilizes them in a grim dystopian sci-fi.
It feels like someone who was an art major is like, guys, I'm going to make a very colorful, it's art. It's so art, guys. My game is so art. Like, bro, if it hurts my eyes to look at it and it's frustrating, modern gamers, if people like, why a lot of people like modern, militaristic games over games like this is because no one wants to stare at something that fucking hurts their eyes or is blinding. People there's a reason why some animals or plants are displayed in a way that, especially when they're predators, they bait prey into them. It's because the predator, something about them for the trap is appealing to the eye. And that's how they get people in. This game does, let's be honest, majority of people do not like the art in this game because it's it pushes people away. It's not appealing to the eye. And that's a problem. When you make something that inherently, or just by looking at it, is not appealing to stare at, no one wants to play it. You could say games of shitty narrative. Okay, if the gameplay is good enough, you can ignore it. But in this case, this is the gameplay. Staring at something the entire time. I actively thought the night mode of Night Marsh was great. It was an improvement because you didn't see the map. You didn't see the bright ass colors. It just turn the whole game dark and it would be better.
Looking setting. The problem being the rest of the game is so damn generic. The UI is hard to navigate and even read.
That too.
The UI looks like my friends modded it into Halo 2 or something. And the actual game systems are no deeper, with each shell serving as the body of each runner, aka player on TOS 84. The idea is runners are manufactured mercenaries with programmable traits and personalities, and used to navigate harsh conditions on the planet instead of actual human forms. Originally, these runners would have elements of personalities that came from historical features and more. When a shell is destroyed, because your mind as the operator or runner is already detached, you just warp into another shell and repeat the process. This is probably the most unique part of Marathon, to be honest, because the actual execution was essentially just a hero shooter in this game now, where each hero has their own personality and unique abilities. So Marathon, great gunplay or not, as Kotaku would say, seemed like a shell of a game. And they, and myself, and many others would not see the feasibility of a game unless some serious changes were made. And that's
just not
what would happen in the summer of 2024, when Bungie would not only delay Marathon, they would promise to make some serious game design changes to respond to the legion of negative feedback they had been receiving, with the new launch set to be the following year in the spring now instead. Sony shortly after would...
I'm sorry. What the fuck? I know I'm fast forwarding, but what the fuck is that soundtrack? I'm going to slow it down. There's no way that fast forwarding the soundtrack, it sounds this fucking bad at speed.
Publicly reveal after their major...
No, it's okay. It's just the soundtrack in the background is awful, bro. What the actual fuck? It's awful.
Concord failure that the delay of Marathon and, well, their overall live service strategy, which was like the Greenlight 10 to 15 live service games in quick succession, hadn't been going very smoothly either. And when you get mentioned negatively before even launching, delayed or not, by your parent company, it shows how much was riding on the success of your launch, which is exactly why the game was delayed, right? A serious delay like this means that those in charge felt like no other alternative was viable. But right before this announcement was made, there was actually another serious bit of information that would be revealed concerning Marathon, and one that also likely contributed to the game's delay and many people's negative opinion of the game.
Stolen art fiasco,
And that was accusations of plagiarism.
Art that makes me God.
Marathon coming from multiple artists, such as Tofu Rabbit and Anti-Real, all showing receipts that seemed to show some level of...
Wait, what? Hold on. This is before though. This had nothing to do with Marathon. Though he's making a great point at pointing out the consistent issue that Bungie themselves has stolen art multiple times and then blamed someone else. It's always a third party. It's never them.
authenticity, such as mock weapon drawings, environment assets seemingly taken from artist poster designs made years prior, and more. Something that Bungie had already been accused of concerning Destiny, by the way.
Multiple
this would force
times.
Bungie to address the reports, as they would build steam on social media. With video game media outlets, Bungie would have art director Joseph Cross and game director Joe Ziegler make a public apology May 16th, 2025, with Cross sitting there looking like he was being sent to the gulag after the video, with him struggling to even get his words out concerning his statement about the accusations of art plagiarism from trans artists, specifically and plural. His excuse being they obtained a bunch of concept art and reference pieces that their team seemed to miss their due
Always
diligence
someone
on
else's
and crediting,
fault.
which made it into the liability of the game in alpha. But this game was moments away from launching, and at this point having to comb through your game's art and redo it was not feasible for the company, which meant they were going to have to pay up or work to satisfy the artists they had wronged, which usually means crediting them, which they would reportedly do according to Anti-Real themselves, but I'm skeptical of that ultimately. It wasn't just taking some elements, it's like the game's whole iconography and high contrast coloring, which set the game apart, and is almost the only thing that does. I personally like the style of the art Marathon exhibits because it's bold and unique, but I can't help but feel this weird and
I don't know
sour
about that,
taste in my
Chief.
mouth about it now. And while the entire thing ends up being ironic when the game is about corporations and their endless search for greed, and yet the art style seem to be much of the same. This had done, in my eyes, irreparable damage to the brand of Bungie and their upcoming sci-fi shooter Marathon, and soured many players from even touching the game. Marathon would host their second technical
By
test.
the way, hear what he said. This fiasco and just how Bungie treat like the alpha and all that jazz was the main reason why people wouldn't touch the game. It had nothing to do about Twitter. It had nothing to do about YouTubers. It had nothing about people have already submitted their opinion about Marathon a long time ago when Bungie revealed this. People need to get through their skulls. People watched, observed, didn't like what they saw, didn't like what was going on. They said, fuck you, Bungie. And they have not consumed and will not consume this game. It's time to wake up and smell the shit.
On October 22nd through the 28th of 2025, which would manage to be a much more positive testing phase for the game. But this and the previous tests were actually under NDA, with the NDA having been lifted on the first test according to reports on purpose to unleash the negative response that the game was getting, and only a select few video game journalists getting to report on the game publicly. Paul Tassi, the king of Destiny, would report on Marathon as well in his time during his technical testing, which was that unless you were already a fan of extraction shooters, Marathon had done very little to attract you as a player, especially when compared to another competitor, Arc Raiders, who had just launched the same month of the test and seemed to find a great amount of success in being closer to Escape from Tarkov, the extraction.
Arc Raiders releasing their test and releasing stuff right around the same time Marathon did more harm than any YouTuber, even like Asmongold, Asacross, even like me, any instance that did more imperishable harm to Marathon than anything, because it showed people, even casuals, especially remember, Bungie said that this game is not for everyone. It showed this is what you could get versus what you can get from Bungie. And that helped cement people's decision to not consume Marathon. And then Arc Raiders came out and shit down the throat of Marathon, and Marathon never could recover. Now you could say, popularity of Arc Raiders has gone down. Still like 20 times more people playing Arc Raiders right now than they are playing Marathon. But Marathon itself has never been able to recover from the damage that Arc Raiders has caused it. I do believe that if Arc Raiders did not release, they probably would have seen probably better numbers. I think that's a fair assessment. I don't know how much, I'm not going to even estimate, but I do believe they would have seen better numbers. But Arc Raiders itself has done imperishable harm, more harm than anything that any YouTuber or Twitter post could ever do, or any Steam chart could do.
Action shooter pioneer, and yet offering a unique and challenging PvE threat that kept players honest too, and giving them a more desire to be cooperative. The strangest and most conflicting thing about Marathon, though, which Tassi manages to mention in his thoughts as well, is that the game is actually caught in between being more hardcore than Tarkov and less hardcore at the same time. I'll explain. More hardcore in terms of gunplay and gameplay, but more casual in nearly every other way, including you being given free.
I disagree. If you think that Marathon is harder gunplay wise, you've never played Tarkov. Tarkov has multiple attachment systems, like similar to this, but more so because most of the attachments on Marathon are like stat boost, whereas attachments in Tarkov can transform and change a game. And ammo types, you have multiple types that do different things, and some are stronger, some are weaker. The armor you wear, there's different types. The earmuffs you wear, like, it is more intricate, so it is harder to understand and figure out what kind of bullet types are stronger than the others unless you look up a guide. Marathon, you just literally put on purple shit or gold shit and have the ammo that's default to it. Like anyone who thinks that the gunplay is harder than Tarkov has never played Tarkov.
Starter kits to play. So who was this game actually attempting to appeal to? This essentially was a fictitious audience that didn't exist. A Destiny fan who liked extraction shooters already was a bit of a reach, but outside of that, a gamer who likes an extraction shooter who is harder to play than most, but less involved and less hardcore, which is sort of like the lifeblood of the genre. Worse, Bungie's answer to everything was that players would find it easier over time to recover from bad losses, which sounds like you're telling people to submit themselves to constant thrashing.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I believe in this. I'm a martial artist and I also like fighting games, but that's a niche expectation and market expectation, such as
it's also not feasible in modern gaming. Back in the day, you'd put you'd get your ass raked over, you would get beat up, and then you got back up. I remember playing God of War, the classics, doing the hard mode, doing the challenges to unlock some of the best looking skin in the game. By the way, shout out to when you could do that in video games. And it was unfair. Sometimes the game would bug and it was like be some stupid bullshit, but you did anyways because you were a goddamn gamer. You did it anyways. So there's some truth to this. You should sweat your balls, but modern gamers don't want that. If that was the case, more people would be angry that you have to swipe your card for skins instead of earning them in game by doing hard achievements. Hell, even Destiny, Bungie put in really good guns by doing PvP and doing in-game PvP, and people bitched about it because they didn't want the challenge. So that's this. We live in a world where everything is hand-holdy, everything needs handouts because most people either don't have the time or don't want the time. They need that immediate gratification. And that's kind of the problem with modern games or modern gamers is that you got these Zoomers, these people on Adderall who need constant gratification. Hell, just going a little mini rant. Whenever this past summer started, before we dismissed school, we had a movie day for our students while teachers got a hour break, lunch, whatever. We gave them extra time. We had everyone in the gym and they were watching the basketball movie with the dog. Oh my God, it's a classic. Jesus, why can't I forget? But they were watching it, and that movie has a slow build up to the main big part of it where it reveals that the dog can play basketball and it's exciting and all. The kids were already bored by barely in the middle of it because the movie is a slow build up. Even kids nowadays need constant, immediate gratification. They won't even sit to watch a kid movie if it's not immediately gratifying. That's how cooked we are as a society. So unfortunately, modern games, if they don't gratify you, people don't want to play. Air Bud, thank you, Gizmo. Air Bud, yes, the goddamn classic. Air Bud. Kids couldn't even, they already got bored and were already, little kids, not like the big kids, little kids who would be when I was a kid were all over it. What's up, moobs? So that's where we live in, is where modern gamers cannot even tolerate, small buildups. And so a game like this, where it isn't immediately gratifying and you're asking them to submit a lot of time to get, feel good and to get rank ups, they don't want to do it. They don't.
Like I said.
And the difference between, I will say, about Tarkov is that you can get that immediate gratification, because the nice thing about Tarkov is that it doesn't matter if you have the shittiest gun, the shittiest weapon, you could get lucky and get a kill on a dude that's fully kitted up. It's that holy shit, oh my God moment where you kill a team with some shitty gear and then you go from zero to hero with it. That Tarkov has that sauce where, yes, you can get shit on, but you can also shit on the best players right from the get-go.
With fighting games, or something that's more strategic, like StarCraft. While many people can be okay with that sort of thing, arguably, and I say this as a martial artist, most people aren't.
Yes.
Bungie would respond to the feedback of the most recent test a month or so later, where they would seemingly commit to making the game more hardcore, with statements to support this, such as them claiming that players want more challenge. The whole point of an extraction shooter is you are challenged to even survive, which is sort of true, but when you have the ability to play a game fast and slow, aka camp and then kill someone in one shot with fast time to kill and gameplay, it's actually more hardcore already in some ways. Further pushing things in that direction might seem intuitive, but it was a bit of a trap. Bungie would also further state that according to feedback, we heard the feedback that that the world didn't feel dangerous or lived in, which seemed to be them doubling down on making the game more hardcore versus more approachable. While these might actually be relevant decisions when making a niche product, Marathon wasn't a niche product, and it didn't have the luxury of being one, especially when the budget was reportedly $250 million. Meanwhile, our graders had cost 1/3 of that, and had now managed to sell as many as 14 million copies, doing so with an affordable and approachable price of $40 too, a price Bungie would actually mimic with the launch of Marathon. The last major changes to come to Marathon before the game would release in the spring of 2026 was the major shell revisions that happened in January 2026. These shell changes would shift the game from being a hero shooter of sorts with pre-made characters to more custom characters that you could select your own upgrades and abilities for individually through the game's shell model system, where you would choose a shell to inhabit, granting you access to their body and unique abilities that would come with it, such as the Assassin, specializing in stealth and subterfuge, the Destroyer, a well-balanced generalist, the Vandal, featuring the best movement in the game, the Triage, functioning sort of like a support, the Recon, the king of information, the Thief, focused on obtaining the best loot, the Sentinel, about area control, and finally, the Rook, which was the most unique shell mode.
Oh, I was wondering what the fuck. I'm hearing my own. I'm like, damn, he's using the same music as me.
Taking inspiration from Escape from Tarkov's Scav system, where in that game a player drops into an already in progress match as a solo player, risking nothing since you're given a loadout, allowing you to loot up your stash a bit. Though the problem in Marathon is that you are always given a free kit, so there's kind of like, you're not really forced to use the Rook system, which in Escape from Tarkov, either you go into things with like a knife or a melee weapon, or you have to go the Rook route, which
they butchered Rook. Like, it's funny because people bitched about Rook, and yet Scavs in Tarkov felt like how Rook was. Like, it's just crazy. Now, I will say the knife was crazy because I remember just knifing everyone to death. Like, it was so bullshit. It's so funny. The knife just absolutely destroying everyone. That was fun. I wish I just did a knife only run, just not try to knife everyone to death. But Tarkov, like, people, like, you can tell people in Marathon are so sensitive. Tarkov, the scavs you can get lucky with scavs, but some of the complaints, like that's been a thing since Tarkov existed.
Just being a scav and trying to get some, little pieces here and there. The core difference makes Marathon a lot more about gunplay, if you think about it. But back to Marathon, or with the implant and core system in the game, with implants granting you passive stats and allowing for up to 4 to be chose, and then cores allowing for up to 2, which would then give you unique abilities such as turning you invisible when aiming or giving you a second charge on your grapple device. Cores are sometimes unique to your shell model too. And then you have the weapon and equipment system in the game, which allows you to customize your optics, barrel, and ammo.
See, here's the problem. The concept of having builds in an attraction shooter sounds cool until you realize that if you die a lot, you lose all that, and you no longer have a build. The build is only good when you can stay alive. And people are going to be like, that's a skill issue. Sure, it's a skill issue. But people die from dumb shit all the time. Or if you die because of loss of time, or if you get, disconnected from desync, oh well, your build's gone. All that time trying to cultivate a cool build to do cool shit. Who gives a shit? This is not Destiny. It's an attraction shooter. Even Tarkov doesn't waste time with that bullshit. It's like attachments, the gun, and the armor you wear. Just shoot the fucking gun. So this is cool, but this isn't Destiny. An attraction shooter, it just makes no fucking sense.
On your gun and what kind of shield and utility gadget you would take. You also have things like ammo, power cells, and medical supplies to fill your bag and resupply, which just about sums up the customization, loot, and loadouts of the game, which was fairly extensive in Marathon. Marathon would launch globally on major platforms March 5th, 2026. Marathon would score relatively impressively amongst both critics and players, according to both Steam and aggregate review website Metacritic, where it would score an 88% from fans and an 82 out of 100 from 55 different critics respectively. These numbers are pretty good, especially considering how little content was in the actual game, where the majority of the strength of the reviews
outside of journos, which most of them are probably paid anyways, let's be honest, because they all parrot the same thing. They post it multiple times, hoping that people would believe them. Again, I'm going to cite the whole Steam reviews. Using that as a basis is stupid. When you have 70% on Steam and 1.5, or at that time, people 1.2 million sales, and you have 30K something reviews, who gives a shit if it looks positive? Sony citing that instead of citing sales and player population are the two biggest red flags. When you start Steam reviews, guys, we have 30K positive reviews, just 30K. No one gives a shit.
Seem to come from the game's quality gunplay and customization. Some pretty major reviewers, though, such as IGN, would rate Marathon quite high at a 9 out of 10.
I wonder
in
why.
Their review, they would describe the game as unapproachable, unforgiving, and off-puttingly creepy, but mean that mostly in a positive way, naturally bigging up the gunplay. while simultaneously talking about how there's plenty of room for improvement, like better onboarding, better UI, and more maps, which is just like, how are you giving it a 9 out of 10?
Exactly. That's the biggest part. The onboarding sucks and no one's playing it. There's no maps, which it doesn't feel like a complete game. It feels like an early access game. Like, how does it get a 9 out of 10 when there's some glaring issues? Hell, Halo campaign got like an 8 out of 10. Halo purist in me gave it a 5 out of 10 because they had no multiplayer. But like 9 out of 10, dude, that's how you know you're paid by Bungie
one
or
of the most
Sony.
positive reviews, period, just more flowery than IGN's, I guess. 9 out of 10. The same rating they gave Arc Raiders, by the way, where they would say Marathon contained excellent gunplay, phenomenal art, and a cool customization system. Though the strange thing was how different both of these games actually were and were performing because of this. Arc Raiders has hope built into the fabric of the game, which has led to lobbies being divided based on the ABM matchmaking, aggression-based matchmaking, that pulled aggressive players with each other and non-aggressive players with each other. So not only were players choosing to cooperate with each other, even just without that, more often than not, they were incentivized by the matchmaking for this, despite no exclusive PvE-only mode. And to be blunt, the proof was in the pudding. Marathon had peaked at 77,000 players, while Arc Raiders had peaked at just 459,000 players.
Yep.
I feel like these critical reviews were pretty irresponsible. It's one thing to like the game, but to rate it amongst some of the greatest games.
He's not mentioning a big point that even makes it worse. They delayed their review for one fucking map, and one that was on a rotation. It was limited time map. People delayed their reviews like about a month later, which they would not do for other games. But they gave special treatment to Bungie and delayed for the Cryo Archive game. And then they gave them like 9 out of 10. Fuck off. You are paid and bought by Bungie Sony. Fuck off. It's so apparent because you didn't do it for any other fucking game.
Of all time just felt bewildering.
Not only that, defeats the purpose of a fucking review. The whole point is to put a review out close to the launch so that you can tell people what they're buying, whether it's worth or not. You don't wait like about a month later to be like, guys, we want you to know that we think it's a 9 out of 10 and you should buy it. By then, people have already made their decision. Like, fuck off.
All things considered, especially when it seemed like only people who played the game or liked extraction shooters were rating it highly, which seemed to be a very small amount of players. Though no mention of the game's poor value battle pass system from critical reviewers, which didn't allow for you to earn back currency you would spend to roll towards.
Oh yeah, that was a big one.
Only offer one skin and would oftentimes give you duplicate cosmetic items, being easily the worst value battle pass in extraction shooter or BR history. The game would launch with 4 maps, just 4. Perimeter, the open starting,
which is funny. Marathon has the shittiest microtransactions I've ever seen in any video game. It is so bad. They took Destiny and they're like, we're going to copy Destiny because Destiny was really bad too because most of it was fucking material bullshit. And they're like, we're going to put this in Destiny in Marathon and people are going to eat it up because they ate it up in Destiny. People ate our shit, our slop in Destiny. They're going to eat shit here. Come to find out, no one's eating shit here. And who would have thought? And also the skins are worse. They literally $20 for a dildo. Wow, that's great. And their actual like store is bare bones. I'm like, what is this game? You don't even know how to sell shit. Like, at least in Destiny, you made some badass looking skins. Here, it's like, all we can do is a $20 dildo.
Training zone map, outpost, a close quarters facility-based map, and Dire Marsh that was added later, which was a swampy area. And then the 4th map I will discuss very shortly. But really, you had 2 maps for 2 weeks at launch, which felt crazy for a game that was in development for so long, but wasn't far off of Arc Raiders 5. Still, it's not even really a 4v5. It's more like a 3v5. And even that was unfair. Why? Arc Raiders maps are huge. They're so big, players can largely remain undetected.
That is a big point. Arc Raiders maps are huge, dude. They're massive. Man, Marathon is baby maps. They're just baby maps. It feels like an early access game. People who spent $40, it feels like you're beta testing. It feels like a scam.
For invisibility. The tight cornered map design in Marathon felt like it was purposely designed to force the fastest paced gunfights as possible, which was only going to attract a certain kind of player really. But yeah, to put a bow on my statements, I really think the critical reviews for Marathon were just very irresponsible and totally off base. Cryo Archive, the de facto in-game zone, would be introduced shortly after launch, 2 weeks later alongside Ranked for the first time. Cryo Archive is the fourth map that I was talking about, and was located on the USEC Marathon colony ship in orbit, which you would later figure out was abandoned due to it being attacked. Cryo Archive serves as the multi-layer dungeon of the game, not just allowing for players to potentially extract or exfil, as it's called in Marathon, with powerful gear that could net as much as 50,000 credits on a single run, the catch being the 5,000 credit buy-in minimum, and the challenge presented throughout the tiered dungeon. If you make it to the end of the dungeon, you can fight a compiler, which is a 4 alien race member who was likely being experimented on by the AI Durandal, who we would discover was somehow involved with the colony on Tall City 4, who, if defeated, grants his exclusive weapon, rare implants, or weapon modifiers, and 8,000 worth of credits, and golden shields or backpacks. The rewards were grand, but not realistic for most players to even reach, with community reports estimating that this in-game zone was made for like maybe 0.5 to 5% of the player base.
Which, this is the same stuff that they did for Destiny. Listen, but I will say for Destiny raids and dungeons are perfect end games. This having one specific map that is just not even the compiler fight at best looks like a strike boss or a patrol boss, like a Lost Sector boss. Like the more time has gone by, the compiler fight is actually pretty fucking shit. It's pretty fucking shit. Like, I think the biggest part is probably the trying to do the PvP in that. But outside of that, the Cryo Archive is kind of lame.
Staggeringly low number for such an important piece of in-game content, clearly meant to be a large focus for the game. Bungie would follow up this major update with their mid-season update.
Yeah, and it's a difference. Like when you buy an expansion, there's an entire expansion, and then you have one little piece of content. For this, you bought an entire game, and one of the only maps, one of the main maps is weekly rotating, and you could barely fully experience it. So it's like it's a bad look.
The following month, April 14th, 2026, and this update was interesting for me because it was a clear answer, I think, to the success of Arc Raiders, allowing players to now resurrect other runners and allowing for better group options with them for future exfils. You even got increased XP for playing solo now. The game would even add a number of contracts to complete for gameplay rewards on top of reworking Perimeter, the game's beginner map, to solo play only, still focused on the same though. Look, the mid-season update was a good update, but it felt like Marathon was playing catch-up to their competition. Problem being, the rate of cooperative play was inherently lower in their game no matter the concessions they had just made, because the entire premise of the game and lore was about profiting for yourself, or whatever faction you were working for as a mercenary. There's no unifying goal like in Destiny, and the gameplay being hardcore as well just makes it feel even more unfriendly. While Arc Raiders was third person and allowed for more chances of a comeback or avoidance playstyle due to the higher time to kill and then bigger map. While fans of Marathon seem to be quite happy with the game as the game struggled to reach even 20,000 players by May 2026, Sony would claim they were prepared to support Marathon with more content and not shut it down, while seemingly ignoring the elephant in the room, which was that the game only managed to sell one.
Again, they've been saying the same shit for a while now. They're ignoring player population. They have not mentioned financials in any of their reports and how like any numbers. They just keep citing the same bullshit. The Steam reviews are good. Retention is high. This time we've got some new players. Wow. That's really informative to your shareholders and everyone else. Very, very good.
1.2 million copies compared to Arc Raiders' 16 million copies sold, or even Destiny 1's 6 million copies sold. There wasn't much to bet on here, with the audience being smaller than some indie developer games, and with the size of a AAA company at 300 developers working on Marathon, a $250 million game reportedly, for 4+ years, the money wasn't going to add up, and fast. But Sony couldn't just exactly abandon the game when it could lead to the shuttering of Bungie altogether. Season 2 for Marathon would drop June 2nd, 2026, and with it, the introduction of a new zone in Dire Marsh, which would serve as a disorienting, horror-inducing new map to overcome, and the new Sentinel Runner shell.
You can't say it's a new map. It's literally a map that was at launch that's now dark. You cannot say this is a new map. It's literally just a day-night cycle.
Most importantly to accompany the new season, I think, was the introduction of the game's new Cradle system, which allowed for you to upgrade and further customize your runner shell as the season would progress, allowing you to convert weapons, equipment, and other items into XP for the Cradle. I think a lot of live service—
By the way, I played this map. I know, and I think this is better than the day version. Like the Night Marsh is much better than the day version. But Tarkov has the day-night cycle itself, but you don't choose based on map, like, oh, is it night map, is it dark map? No, it's the single map, and you choose the time cycle. That's it, because it's the same fucking map.
games have something kind of like this, but giving the game a sort of economy system, leveling up the Cradle, gives you access to the energy that you can place into 6 different upgrade trees: strength, recharge, dexterity, endurance, support, and resistance. Think of a stat or trait system. These new changes would help jump the population up to like 40,000 players peak, though only 3,000 more players on average, which I think shows how much burnout the game was suffering from. Which sure is inherent to the extraction genre, which I think is problematic, but seemed to be hitting Marathon even harder. Bungie had to pull out an Uno reverse card though and answer some of the echoed sentiments of their player base, which they would do with the announcement of a soon-to-launch new PvE mode dubbed Vault Breaker. This mode would allow you to earn vault data utilized for upgrading your kit or gear in the PvP modes or map. This new PvE mode was experimental and set to be part of the next mid-season update. The thing is, as great as it sounds, the mode was supposed to only be temporary, set to expire in August. And well, each season came with a new wipe to all your progress, gear, weapons, and levels and contracts, you name it, which we didn't even mention yet. Also further contributing to the seemingly inherent burnout that the game had. This further feeds the whole
when 70% of your community for Marathon is Destiny players, and then they come to the realization that all the experience, all the gear, everything you've done is wiped, they come to this reality moment that everyone's been telling them, you don't get to keep your shit. They're like, what? I didn't keep my stuff? This is the Destiny 2 faulting all over again. Welcome to fucking extraction shooters. Everyone was telling you. Now you know why people were mad that they made an extraction shooter. No one wanted this. But you were like blindly like, is he great? Hello? Welcome to sniffing your own fart. Ding, 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 ding. You get to do it all over again.
Marathon was built for a faux hardcore audience, one that didn't really exist. Because how could casual players maintain their stashes while also losing so much if you reset their progress every few months? It just seemed like a recipe for a game that would only attract the most elite players, which wasn't sustainable as a multiplayer game, let alone a game that cost $250 million, and one that was starting to become the leading game in Bungie's fading portfolio. Bungie was already in deep waters. 2026 was the year that everyone else found out about it too, when they would cut nearly 300 employees, a third of their workforce, when they would admit Destiny 2 had fallen short of expectations, which had led to the layoffs and them putting the entire Destiny franchise on the shelf, with no promise of new content or sequels to come. This was after Sony had just recently faced a massive $765 million impairment loss due to Bungie's performance specifically. Most of the Destiny team would be laid off, but even the Marathon team would be affected too. Though Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Herman Hulst would state that the layoffs were necessary to align the studio's resources with its current priorities and long-term goals, and that they will remain committed to Marathon and other efforts focused on incubation efforts for future projects. And if you want to hear more about how this affected the Destiny franchise, again, just check out the Destiny 2 video. But this didn't bode well for Marathon either, with the majority of the Destiny team laid off. All of the company's focus now had been thrusted into the lap of an incredibly niche hardcore extraction shooter, a game that was never intended to prop the company up entirely. Worse, if what they say is true about 70% of Marathon's audience coming from Destiny, they weren't going to be happy about these announcements, and the loyalty to Marathon might be even more fickle. But coming as a bit of a shock was the news of Ziegler, Marathon's game director, departing July 18th, 2026.
He peaced out.
Ziegler was going to move on to...
This is a big nail in the coffin. Like, this is running over the dead corpse multiple times, because this guy was the lifeblood of this game, and he's gone. You're done fucked up.
Other ideas and adventures reportedly, and this is still a developing story, sure, with many in the community thinking that Ziegler was fired and didn't depart on his own volition, really. Ziegler was set to be replaced by his assistant game director, Delchath III, I think is how you say that, who would lead the game now alongside creative director Julia Nardine. But did any of this matter at this point? If the idea was that Ziegler led the ship astray, the ship has already crashed, everyone. And when you put someone in charge of things who likes to do things, a certain kind of way, you can't really be surprised by the end result, which is you, Bungie, made an incredibly niche extraction shooter that nobody asked for, no matter how good the gunplay is or not. And that's not a sustainable business model or product selling point alone. In the case of Valorant with Ziegler, it worked because you had a company not reliant on the success of the product nearly as much, and a game model that was far more proven with Counter-Strike.
People will continue to point out, he makes a great point, Counter-Strike. People will talk about Ubisoft and Rainbow Six Siege. You know why Rainbow Six Siege was able to even get to the point where it's at? It's because Ubisoft has multiple IPs that they can use to lean on for cash flow. Bungie doesn't have that. They had Destiny. They can that. There is nothing. You cannot be like, they can look at Ubisoft. They could do that too. No, they can't. Logistically, they cannot. Financially, they cannot. Bungie has nothing to lean on. Ubisoft had multiple titles to lean on. The fuck are you talking about?
Marathon was even more niche than Apex Legends, though, and other extraction shooters and BRs. And Apex, for example, is a title that has often struggled from carrying the too hardcore label. Vault Breaker would be introduced July 21st, 2026 for 2 weeks' time, and essentially was the Cryo Archive but without other players.
And this is up to
unless you
date.
decided to team up with other players in duo or trio modes. Choosing to do so, by the way, was optimal since the game, PvE focused or not, now was difficult as a solo player in the game, mimicking just about all other forms of gameplay too for solo players, including, PvP, which just goes to show you can't really design an extraction shooter exclusively for one group of players, like for groups or for solo players. You need a
I do want to say Marathon is significantly, it's like babies are us when you do trios, but you play solo. This is where it feels like a hardcore, like compared to going solo on Tarkov. Like when it comes to like enemies, the enemies in this game, as they ramp up, you will get fucked. Plus ammo, like it's like I feel like ammo is much harder to come by to be useful here than it is in Tarkov. But the enemy ramping up with like overshields and bullshit will fuck you up. Like especially when you have no overshields in Tarkov, it feels like you can manage as a 0 to hero. Holy shit. You get fucked up. It's solo is the way to play this game if you want hardcore. You will get dicked on.
Mixture of the two, or at least encouragement for players to work together or avoid each other in certain circumstances. This likely means having different sorts of encounters for different types of players. This new mode, though, was greatly appreciated by the remaining 14,000 players peak or so, and the much lower 5,000 players on average, but was criticized mostly because it would be a temporary mode. But this is where I'm gonna have to do my thing, and be the detective who says things people sometimes don't want to hear. Many fans of Bungie or Marathon, it's hard to tell sometimes, are quick to claim if they just made Marathon more PvE-centric or added PvE content, something that people also said with New World, by the way, it would fix the game. The issue being, at that point you have something similar to Destiny, and yet a highly inferior version of it.
Yes.
And if anything, even if they can add some PvE content, it's going to feel incredibly disconnected and
100%.
by comparison to had they just, I don't know, copied like The Division instead, which had single-player content but was largely focused on the cooperative content in the game, and it had PvP in the form of the Dark Zone where you could lose your picked-up items. It was far, far more approachable, and it wasn't even an extraction shooter, technically. I really think people would have given that game more of a chance than this game. Hell, even if you named it Destiny The Dark Times or some shit. As
You know what's funny is that Dr. Lupo literally does not have any like influence in Marathon or even shown in Marathon. I don't even think he plays Marathon anymore. And after his cheating at a tournament allegations, like holy shit, that destroyed so many connections for him.
a spin-off game, but instead, in the end, we had Bungie dedicate 300 of their developers in 4 years of time.
Oh, look, it's Bungie's poster boy. Guys, he's not a Bungie shill. He's not a Bungie. He just has friends at Bungie. That's it.
Game that barely anyone was ever going to play, even if they liked it in the first place. And to address another elephant in the room, yeesh, I need to get these guys out of here. Extraction shooters are not exactly in the state of growth as a genre at the moment. Hell,
No, it's
even
not.
after their initially massive successes, Arc Raiders as of late, in July of 2026, only has 50,000 players peak, just 10% of the game's initial audience. Delta Force, which launched back in 2025, still has 120,000 players peak or so, and 70,000 players on average, though with very mixed reviews. And it also primarily relies heavily on the Battlefield as game massive mode that's included in the game, so it's not just an extraction mode game. The point I'm trying to make here is that extraction shooters almost inherently have a high burnout rate, and unless they can effectively offer another way to enjoy the game, they can't overcome that. I'm not convinced of them as a genre, really, and never have been despite Tarkov's success. My reasons being, a vertical slice of a BR to me doesn't seem like that much of a viable game design or business model, but that's just how I feel. And yes, people will point to Tarkov, which launched on Steam a year ago, and the game has been around for almost 10 years now, but Tarkov was a unique part of internet culture.
Okay, you mentioned that, but you need to mention that it has its own launcher. Its own launcher, dude. It has significant, like, I think someone said 200K on its own launcher, or did. Like, it's been out for years.
From the community up, much like DayZ was for its time. These games have permeated the cultural zeitgeist in ways that most games can't even dream of, which is oftentimes why they are orders of magnitude larger than their competition in the same spaces. I'm just not convinced one long-lasting internet icon of an extraction shooter is proof of an industry existing exactly. And if you want to respond with, what about Arc Raiders? My response is simply sure, but good luck making that success sustainable, which we have still yet to see with an extraction shooter.
It's true.
But the timeline has come to an end, detectives, and we have gathered more than enough clues.
I like this video. It was very fair. Like he gave direct criticism. He even glazed aspects about it. He was positive about things that I disagreed on. It's crazy because it's probably one of the most informed, most articulated, fair, critical game review. And so many Marabots are mad and triggered by this, and they cannot give any like counter arguments. They can't say why he's wrong. They're just getting frustrated and saying he's wrong. It is so fucking funny that this is probably one of the best articulated, well-defined, criticism-driven, not like your generic hate video, and they've got nothing to counter it. They have nothing. That's when you know this game's cooked. Is that something like this they can't even think of like actual counters. They're just like, you're wrong. Okay, that's great. Continue to live in your little bubble. All right, link will be down below so you can give it a like, and I'm going to go ahead and give it my like. Boop, there's a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next one. As always, don't forget to game out. Huzzah!